So welcome, hello everyone, and welcome to Kirstin Willders Artist in Residence closing presentation. I'm Beth Ann Gerstein, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Museum of Ceramic Art in Southern California. AMOCA's Artist in Residence program was established in 2012 and is one of the few long-term fellowship opportunities for ceramic artists on the West Coast. The residency provides artists an opportunity to produce or develop a new body of work. The program is funded through generous support from the Julianne and David Armstrong, from Laguna Clay, and the Wingate Foundation. The next call for residency applications will be in early 2023. We've had the pleasure to host Kirsten as an artist in resident at the AMOCA Studios for the past year. And this talk marks the closing event of her residency. And today they will share some of their accomplishments during her time here. Also joining us today are AMOCA's studio manager, Nathan Stanfield, at least I think he's here, and exhibition manager, Pam Aliaga. And now I'd like to turn it over to Pam, who will introduce Kirsten.
Kirstin Willders, one of our resident artists who came to AMOCA last year and now is sadly leaving us for their next venture. During this time, they've created such amazing architectural forms with a variety of new materials. As an Alfred alumni, they have shown in multiple exhibitions, including this year's NCECA in Sacramento, California. In addition, we were able to arrange a collaboration with the Museum of Neon Art to work with Kirsten to work in their neon studio during her AMOCA residency. Please join me in welcoming Kirstin Willders.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Beth Ann. I really appreciate it. Thank y'all for being here on a California morning, nice and sunny out here. I hope it's nice where you are all joining us from. So again, thank you, Beth Ann and Pam, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the rest of the staff in the museum and studio at AMOCA. It's been really great to be here. Thanks, Paul, for being here and working with us, even though you're departed now for other things. Thank you, Nathan and Tim in the studio, and Kat as well. Many thanks to Dave Armstrong. He's the founder of AMOCA and still very involved in the organization here, and also provides the apartment that I live in as part of my residency. Thank you to Brian Vancell and Laguna Clay. Laguna donates clay and materials for the residents here, and that's an incredible thing to be able to have here. It was already mentioned, but we have been working with a partnership with the Museum of Neon Art in Glendale, and so I'm really appreciative to Corey Siegel, who is the director there, and as well as Tyler Kensek, who is the electric lab technician who facilitates me coming into work in the studio there. So my name is Kirstin Willders. I use the pronoun she, her. Here's some contact info for me, my Instagram handle and my website. So my foundations as an artist are rooted in ceramics and expanded to glass, light, and mixed media. And I'm really constantly expanding my material lexicon and my technical lexicon based on the needs of my work. Today, I'm going to be focusing my talk on the body of work that I made while in residence here. So it's not like a holistic look at my studio practice. If you do want to hear more about my background, I gave a talk at the beginning of my residency that's available to watch online through AMOCA. And so just without going into like all of my credentials, I do have a dual background in art history and in ceramics. So you'll see a lot of art history references as I sort of move through the work here. So my entire adult life has really been shaped by clay. So you can see here in this photo from left to right, me at 18, at 21, at 24, at 27, at 30, and I'm presently 32. And so today you'll see a lot of mixed media work, but my foundations and the core of my work is really clay. I'm a classically trained potter, and actually the majority of my work remains wheel thrown, even if it is altered, disguised, assembled, whatever. I'm really committed to progressing my own work forward and challenging my own conceptions of what it means to work in clay, to call myself a ceramic artist. And so hopefully through my work, I can sort of challenge others in the community in the process. Over the last few years, I've been assembling bodies of work which aren't necessarily planned as cohesive bodies. They're really groupings of individual pieces that all sort of like orbit the same things, share a core idea, or are based on a common phrase or sentiment. And the aesthetic cohesiveness or not is organic based on the needs of each piece. But I found it usually comes together aesthetically because of a kind of snowball effect of materials. So I'll use a material for the specific content it brings to the piece, and then the material will from there be carried over into other pieces. In this way, I'm also building a material lexicon, and alongside whatever history or baggage that material already brings, I will essentially assign additional symbolic meaning to it. So for example, in this body of work on the screen that I completed just before arriving at AMOCA, I was at Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. The red glitter and the wheat were central to the content of the works, but they also created this aesthetic cohesiveness to the body. And so this body of work is called I Carry With Me All My Things, which is a translation of a Latin proverb, omnia mea mecum porto. And all of these were made in Houston, except for the bottom right-hand side, which I made here at AMOCA and sort of acts as a concluding piece to this body of work. And so I thought that would be a good place to start today. This is titled Bleed Through, St Sebastian with Grain. In this body of work, the grain was a literal interpretation from a line in the book, The Price of Salt, which is what the movie Carol is based on, if you've ever seen that. And the red glitter is derived from the phrase friends of Dorothy, so from Dorothy's ruby slippers. If you're familiar with St. Sebastian, he's always depicted pierced with arrows. And yes, he was martyred, but no, those arrows did not actually kill him. So here, this vessel, this body is pierced with arrows of the grain, and yet it still stands defiantly rigid and unfazed. It's bleeding this red glitter, which is its authentic self. And that red glitter will always bleed through here. And so for this piece, here are some source images. And the left is early Renaissance, and the right is Louise Bourgeois. And so for a lot of my source images, because I have an art history background, I usually have like some sort of historical touchstone, and it usually is like medieval, Renaissance, or Baroque, or ancient, honestly. And then I sort of try to find a source image along the same lines that sort of, is more in line with my own value system and sort of balances that more like canonical male-dominated narrative. And so this is the body of the work that I've been working on here in California. It's called True Directions. And as of this moment, it's absolutely incomplete and many things are still in progress. This title, True Directions, comes from a 1999 satirical film about conversion therapy called But I'm a Cheerleader. I hope some of y'all are familiar with it. It's super campy and endearing. It's low budget, has this really great aesthetic to it. And it includes some now very famous people when they were quite young. So like Natasha Lyonne, Clea Duvall, and then RuPaul. And True Directions is the name of the conversion camp. And the bottom right, RuPaul in this shirt, wearing this shirt in the film is just so cheeky, and I highly recommend the film. And so I mentioned I usually latch on to like a phrase or something that becomes a springboard or a general idea for a body of work. And here the title isn't a direct reference to the conversion camp, but it explores all the ways that the phrase true directions can be interpreted. So I mean, just right from the jump, like what even is a true direction? And this phase fits so well thematically for me with my interest in orientation and proprioception within structures, and then also metaphorically concerning like authenticity, masking, and visibility or invisibility. This past year in particular, but honestly, really longer than that, I've been dwelling on these like ideas of seeing and being seen, and the implications of sort of like both sides of that position, visibility and invisibility, sort of like seeing yourself, being yourself, and what it takes to get there or not, to keep yourself concealed. And these hands belong to my dear friend Lex, who lives in Cleveland. And I look for that kind of direct or coded presence in other artists' work and in other source materials as well. So on the left is maybe one of Catherine Opie's most famous photographs. And on the right, just like a single square from a book of comics by Alison Bechdel. If you've heard of the Bechdel test, this is the same Alison Bechdel. And that's on the right. And if anyone knows the musical Fun Home, this is from the book that it's based on. And the text is great, so I'll read it to you. It says, "But like a traveler in a foreign country who runs into someone from home, someone they've never spoken to but know by sight, I recognized her with a surge of joy." So then just a note, these pieces are super new and some are incomplete, so just please bear with me as I try to speak to them and give them context today. This work is directly related to the namesake film and takes nearly all of its design cues from the set design of that film. And it's called The Three Graces. You have just taken your first step in your true direction. The title of my works are often long or multi-part. And maybe I'll look back at them at some point and shorten them and think they're too erudite. But for now, I title them this way to offer cues or make references to the allusions or the content of the work. I prefer subtext, and even though titles are not exactly subtext, they allow me to clue the viewer into my train of thought in a different way. And then they also sort of act as an archive for myself of where I was thinking or what I was thinking about with the pieces. So here are the direct references to the surface treatments. So my piece bottom left, and you can sort of see sort of going clockwise, the daisies came from this really obnoxious bathroom. The palm came from the cheerleading pom-poms and the uniforms. And then the pink fabric came from the bedding of the like girls' bedroom in the film. And my reference point for the physical assemblage of the Three Graces comes from this marble, and it's in the Piccolomini Library in the Cathedral of Siena, Italy. It's ancient Greek or Roman, and it's been here like since the medieval or Renaissance times in this very spot in the library. And so it really became this primary example for later sculptors who were sculpting this same theme. And so it's why a lot of later depictions are in this similar orientation. So I have a Baroque example on the left and then a contemporary example of the Three Graces on the right. And so the Three Graces were role models. They were like the ideal. And each was thought to bestow a specific gift on humanity. And so kind of with this like background in mind, I use the physical orientation of the statues and then the surface treatments of the film to attempt to visualize this sort of like cheeky femme queer ideal that might be or like might have been to sort of like create my own idealized graces. And so in general, when I work with hair, as I have some hair on this piece, I usually use hair that mimics my own. So dark brown, long and straight, or I use hair that's like clearly very fake, like bright, unnatural colors. But I always choose straight hair as, I try to be mindful of cultural appropriation and sort of not traverse into hair cultures that don't belong to me. And so here the choice to use white hair was really just a direct reference to the marble. This piece is called Hair Folly 2, Santa Lucia with Top Knot. And it's dually a reimagining of the iconography of Santa Lucia and a dwelling on facade and masking. I wanted this piece to be kind of startling and weird to look at. It has a really intense gaze, and most inanimate objects don't offer that kind of return stare. And so this can be like a little bit unsettling. And also the eyes are doll eyes, so they actually move. They have motion to them. So St. Lucie and I are personally acquainted. I came across her by accident when I was wandering aimlessly without a cell phone through Venice. I mean, can you imagine? I just had a paper map. So when you come across the body of a saint, it's really a jolt. They're always just like vibrant gold, like brightly illuminated, just like this photo. And really seeing any dead body is startling, to say the least, you know, no matter how shrouded or embellished they are. And the popular hagiography of Santa Lucia includes having her eyes gouged out, which is why in depiction she often holds her own eyeballs. So she's the patron saint of eyes, eyesight, optometrists, etc. And I often use hair as a facade. It masks the body like an architectural facade masks a building. It conceals, and it's often beautiful, but it's really just artifice, and it can be cut away. So I've been using jars as a surrogate for the body. And I think that we've all sort of, at least in ceramics, we've all heard that metaphor or relationship being said, vessel is body, body is vessel. But I think like in the simplicity of that metaphor, there's really a lot of room to play. And so here's a little drawing from my sketchbook. And I'm not great at drawing, but I do consistently use a sketchbook to design and think through my work. And I really love that this little drawing that I did for this is remarkably close to the final piece. But I did decide that St. Lucie definitely needed a top knot instead of a ponytail. This is called Reciprocal Gaze. If you look at me, who do I look at? And it was thinking about a reciprocal gaze that was both inward and outward, like personally, individually, but also could have interpretations of person to person, person to spirituality, person to universe, really just any sort of like content cyclical gaze. And this idea was catalyzed by this scene from the movie Portrait of a Lady on Fire, where the sitter who's in the green on the left points out to the painter who's in the red on the right, the mutual gaze of this act of painting and being painted. And I have put these frames side by side here, but there's a moment in the film where the camera frames the painter as seen from the sitter, and it really seems, you know, so basic. You know, of course, this action would have this dual gaze, but that's not really, you know, how it's framed. Typically, we usually see it as like painter and muse. So we really only see it from like the painter's perspective. And, you know, not to sound cheesy, but it, you know, it's quite profound when you frame it in this different way. For each piece I've done here at AMOCA, I've tried to push myself forward more and more with complexity and with non-ceramic elements. And I found that I'm doing a lot more cold construction of pieces to accommodate non-ceramic elements. So this piece, for example, wasn't in 4 different parts when it was fabricated. And then I basically like assembled it as I went, as I put the wiring in and the lights in and the hair elements in to bring it to this finished state. This piece is called She of the Grain, Madonna del Grano. And it's sort of like a 50-50 split between a Madonna devotion and then like a devotion to Demeter. So it's sort of like this split between like earth, sky, like land, celestial, like it just has that sort of like duality to it. And so the Madonna side is the blue side, and then the Demeter side is the sort of golden wheat side. And here's some sources just to give you an example. So there are lots of different like devotional Madonna types, and this just happens to be Madonna of the Grain. And then you see Demeter on the right in the relief holding the wheat grains. Next, please. I really love the lid of this piece. I think from the Demeter side, so the side that we're looking at right now on the left, it sort of looks like a field of wheat in a way, with them lined up like that. And then if you reverse it, the wheat is like framing the little bun on top. So it looks more like a crown or a halo. This piece, in its totality, this is really like a complicated multi-level piece. So just bear with me as I try to explain it to you. It's essentially framed as using the Annunciation sequence and pictorial structure for telling this particular queer experience of coming out. And so I'm just going to go through the title really quickly here. So Benedicta II, Aedes Sacra, Holy Building after Temple of Vesta. So Benedicta II is like the direct biblical reference to the Annunciation. It's also included in the Hail Mary, and it means blessed art thou. And then Aedes Sacra, it means holy building. And so it's the title given to like a temple or a sacred building in ancient Rome. And then Temple of Vesta, the particular structure of the wee building that I made is modeled after the Temple of Vesta, which held eternal life, or symbolized eternal life. It held eternal fire and symbolized eternal life, or like perpetuity. But rather than fire in my building, which would be complicated, but maybe I'll get there one day, I have a revolving door. So here's a video of the building. I apologize if you might have a little bit of a delay on it. So the backing of this piece is an inverted arch, which for me is essentially an inverted line. And an inverted line is an arch, which is one of the strongest architectural elements. And I really enjoy the inverted column as this like metaphorical element in my work. And so I've used it here to back this piece alongside the Annunciation. And really sort of like the crux of this piece is that, you have this gift and there's power and beauty and strength in it. It's perpetual and eternal, but, like a revolving door, there's also this challenge of continually reasserting yourself and sort of having this like perpetual coming out or perpetual reassertion. Here's a close-up of the lilies and then the source image on the right. So you can sort of see where I was thinking about this like hierarchical structure to the piece. This is called Even on the Ground, the Purple Flower. It rotates by hand, and you can see the little handle there on the front. And it's also scented from all the dried lavender, which is surrounding it, but also part of the surface treatment as well. When you rotate it, sand and other stuff slowly falls out of it, out of the center compartment that you can see there, making a nice little triangular puddle at the meeting of the wall and the floor, sort of as it builds up over time with people turning it. Lavender has really long been associated with queerness, but it's actually not really the original purple flower. I think violets were, and also, pansies, but that's more of a derogatory association. But nonetheless, the color is really the important element here, and that's how we kind of like have ended up with lavender. So this title that I've chosen for the piece comes from a fragment by Sappho, as most of their poetry is in fragments. And it reads, like a hyacinth in the mountains that shepherds crush underfoot, even on the ground a purple flower. This piece is called Io vedo il cielo sopra noi, and that translates to I see the sky above us. The title comes from a classic Italian song, and it's actually pretty good. You should look it up on YouTube. The song is meaningful, not for the song itself, but for a friend that had sort of incorporated it into a poetry recital. And I consider this piece in its totality a metaphorical self-portrait. The shells and the crushed beach matter were collected from particular significant locations for me, and then used on this piece. And actually in the piece that I just showed prior as well. And so this is the most recent piece that I finished, and I just photographed it. I'm not super happy with the photos yet, so don't be too harsh. This is called Porta Santa, a clock without hands is my kind of thing. This piece has a motion sensor on the sort of left part that triggers the light on the right side piece. And motion sensors are kind of a fun party trick, but it's also pretty significant to the content of the work. I wanted this piece to have a camouflage kind of look, like a secret garden vibe with the monotone green turf. Porta Santa is a holy door. And when I was in Italy in 2016, it was a Jubilee year. And I saw these signs everywhere that said Percorso Porta Santa. And so you're supposed to make pilgrimages to all 4 major basilicas in Rome to gain indulgences as part of the Jubilee year. And so these holy doors are ceremonial and they open them for this specific purpose for you to walk through. And so the door on the right is the Porta Santa at San Pietro. And the clock in my piece was pretty directly pulled from this film by Agnes Varda called The Gleaners and I. And at the end, she gleans or trash picks this clock, which is missing all of its moving parts. And she says this, a clock without hands is my kind of thing. You don't see time passing, which again is a pretty simple sentiment, but you know, in the course of this movie, takes on, you know, such meaning. So in my piece, you know, it's Porta Santa, the door is here. There are no hands on this clock. There is no time limit to pass through. But in the meantime, you know, you are seen. This sensor will pick you up. You are seen. So now I'm going to give you some quick looks at pieces that are in progress. So this is a freestanding sort of font, or it was modeled after a baptismal font. And it's about standing tabletop height. It's progressed a little bit further than this, but I haven't taken a recent photo of it. But I'm excited to see where this goes. This is really one that I'm kind of like, have been taking a lot of time to mull over just because it is such a large work. This piece I do intend to finish within the next 2 weeks that I'm here. And it's a multi-part piece with the left side as a traditional cycling fountain. And then the right will be a functional water fountain with like a water jug and a water pump and everything. And there are 2 specific references to this piece. One being from the series Ratched, which is sort of how it takes these like oyster shell shapes. And then the second is from a miraculous image in Rome, the Madonna del Pozzo, or Madonna of the Well, which is I have like a particular affinity for, given that it occurred on my birthday. And so I'm excited to see this work come together while I'm still here. And this piece, I think I started like back in October. It's likely going to be a fully non-ceramic piece, which is rare for me, but really I'm just making that decision based on what the piece requires. So if I don't need to use clay, I don't force it. And this piece is like 98% hair. It's a Victorian hair wrapping technique. And I basically got it to this point and then stalled out, not really because of like the labor that was involved with it, but because I felt like it deserved more than my initial plan. And so at this point, I do have new plans for it that I think will do it more justice. I just haven't gotten there yet. So I did mention this already. Another aspect of my residency at AMOCA was a partnership with the Museum of Neon Art in Glendale. And I'm super, super thankful to them and to Beth Ann for facilitating the residency. And I've been working there about once a week or so since January. It's an amazing place and they are incredibly supportive of artists. It's a really small, but it's a very mighty museum, and they're continually collecting and refurbishing neon. And I highly recommend a visit if you're in LA. I have a few neon pieces that are currently waiting to be bombarded. So the piece on the left is ceramic with integrated tubes, and you can see my little model on top there. Often when I work with neon, I will make these like little models with pipe cleaners. And the piece on the right is a large text piece. And so it's a text piece with a word and then a shadow word. And it reads aberration, apparition. So here's the body of work with the completed pieces as it stands right now. Historically, I've been a bit afraid of color, and I've stuck to just a few shades. But this body of work is really satisfyingly vibrant, I would say. Really just coincidentally because of the materials that the work required here. But you can kind of see there are these like threads that run through it that sort of give it like a little bit more of a cohesive structure to it. So even in its, disparate surface techniques, it all really comes together. So thank you all for being present and for your attention and consideration today. Really appreciate it. Here's just a good motto from one of my favorite museums, the National Museum of Funeral History. It's outside of Houston. Any day above ground is a good one. So thanks again, I really appreciate it. All right, so there are my contacts. Be in touch if you like. I'm pretty active on Instagram, and then my website does have quite a bit more work than I showed today. So again, thanks so much.
For that wonderful artist talk, Kirsten. So we're going to leave some time for Q&A. So if anyone is interested in asking a question, maybe you can kind of use the raising hand emoji and then unmute yourself, but you're also welcome to just write in the chat box, and I'm happy to ask that question to Kirsten. Great. So we have a question from Lynn. How did you get started with making art?
Let's see. I would say sincerely started in making art. I would say high school. I went to a public high school that had surprisingly good art classes. I took textiles, there was jewelry making. That's where I first took a dedicated ceramics course. So I would say, I was always really interested in art and museums when I was a kid, but sincerely started in making art, I would say high school.
I mean, that's a good age.
Yeah, for sure.
Kristin, so we have the questions coming in. I have Muhammad who would like to ask, hello, Kirsten. I would really want to know, how do you find the style of artwork that you are comfortable with? Thank you.
I don't know if you can really find the style. I think that you should just follow the interest that you have, and sort of the particular aesthetic or the style sort of follows that. So like when I was in grad school, I started working with a lot of the cold finishing techniques. And it started really slow and really like, I don't know if you can say it was like, I was like being safe with it, but I mean, I kind of was in a way, like I was sticking to ceramic based materials, but gluing them on surfaces. So I think just sort of follow what you're interested in, and the style will follow, I guess. I think a lot of people in ceramics are sort of highly concerned with finding like a particular style that's their own, because they see professional artists that have really well established aesthetic trends or techniques or whatever. And people are really eager to get there, but it takes a long time, and you really just need to be true to yourself and follow your own interests.
Mavish has a question. What other art forms did you work before ceramics?
Before ceramics, well, in high school, I actually did not even want to take ceramics. I really liked textiles. And I sort of had to be convinced to take the ceramics class. So I would say ceramics is a big thing for me. When I was in undergrad, I really loved jewelry metals. And the place that I'm going after this has a jewelry metals program. So I'm hopefully will dip my toes back into that out there. But I'm not really like a drawer or a painter. I'm very like object oriented and three-dimensionally oriented.
Yeah, I had no clue you're just talented in sewing when we saw the 3D pieces in your studio. I was like, wait, did you just make that for that piece?
Yeah, I'm not actually that talented in sewing. My sewing skills are pretty baseline. But I figured out how to make a nice like pattern. And then from there, it's really just like having a solid, I guess, decent enough sewing machine.
Well, I love it. I mean, I can sew buttons back on my shirt, so it's impressive to me. Caleb is asking, is it difficult to keep track of multiple pieces in progress at once?
Not really, but it is hard to like make significant progress, sort of like in tandem on multiple pieces at once. So like I'm always sort of working on multiple pieces at once, like usually like 4 to 5 pieces at once, just because once you have the ceramic, making the ceramic is super fast, right? Because you need to work with ceramic quickly before it dries out, etc. But then all of the cold processes, so like cold assembling, cold finishing, usually take me the absolute longest time. And that's when I work on a lot of pieces at once. It's not really hard to keep track of the pieces for me. I usually organize my studio, have like the things just all sort of sitting out, and I'll be collecting like the surface treatment materials, the adhesives, whatever non-ceramic things I need, like over time, step by step as I'm working on things. So it's not super hard to keep things out. I just keep things in front of me, basically.
Definitely. I have Mavish back asking, what is the longest you have worked on a piece?
The longest I've worked on a piece, well, the thing is that the piece is in progress. Sometimes the pieces are in progress for a long time, but I'm not necessarily working on them for all that time. So like the piece that I showed with like the Victorian hair wrapping, like, yes, I've been working on that since like October and November, but it's really just been sitting on a shelf for most of that time. So the time that I'm actually spending working on the piece, I really don't know. But some of the pieces do sit around for quite a while before they actually are finished.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone is interested in asking a question, feel free to unmute yourself. Hopefully we don't get like 2 talkers at once. Cool. Aida? I saw an unmute, so I just assumed to call on people.
Don't put her on the spot.
I know, I don't have to put anyone on the spot, actually. I mean, I have loads of questions, so I can ask for everyone, but have you found any particular material here in Pomona? Since I know, basically when you came to Pomona, you're asking what were the best like wig shops?
Yep.
Where could you find, I'm sure everyone who's local knows what I'm talking about, those globes with roses in them.
Yes, I love those.
Did you find a particular material here that you haven't found before in other residencies that you're like, I need to hoard all of this like merchandise right now?
Yeah, I did. Well, so I have some ideas from my residency at Pomona to like carry over into other works. So one of the things I collected was because there's like lots of like 99-cent stores around here, I collected a bunch of little plastic fruits that I want to use for pieces. So I have purchased them and packed them away for my next residency. What else? I really want to do a piece that has little palm trees in it, like little plastic palm trees. And I think that's really because of all the palm trees that are just here, which is quite wild to me as an East Coaster. And then also the jacaranda trees. I am obsessed with them. So I have collected some of the fallen blossoms because they just shed like crazy. And I dried them out. And so I'm going to take those with me to hopefully use in a piece. They're very fragrant when I don't think they're that fragrant when they're actually like fresh. But the fully dried little blossoms have like a very nice scent to them. So I'm taking those with me. And that the jacarandas are like a signature like LA thing. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Cool. No?
I
I think they are. I looked it up on the internet.
I believe it.
I
It
think
seems
so.
like you paid that extra attention that I haven't.
Yeah, I've never seen them before. So I was really like flabbergasted when all these trees started blossoming like these beautiful purple flowers. So I'm hopefully going to I need to find some more trees and collect more to take with me. They're so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And I believe Kim Tucker has a question for you. So.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kirsten. Thanks for a great talk. That was wonderful. And your work is just so exciting.
Thanks.
But
Appreciate
I'm
it.
really interested in the sort of crisscross of influence of film in your work.
Oh, yeah. So this really started like a couple years ago when I like in earnest was really like sitting down and trying to go through like catalogs of like influential female filmmakers in particular. So I was watching like a lot of like French films like Chantal Akerman and Agnes Varda, obviously, but also going through like a lot of queer classics. So like But I'm a Cheerleader, Desert Hearts, you know, like just the classic sort of films like that. And I don't know where exactly it comes from, but I just like latch onto the sentiments and I really enjoy the aesthetic of filmmaking. I have absolutely no like formal training in filmmaking or set design or, you know, anything like that, although I'm definitely interested in it. But I think that sort of like that, what's it called? Like mise en scène of like how the frames are structured and the sets are designed and the people are placed in the frames is really intriguing to me. Yeah, I know it's a theme for sure. I definitely need to come up with maybe like a better answer of the particular influences.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for this wonderful artist talk. And again, if any of you guys have any questions, always feel free to reach out to Kirsten through email, or I mean, people can come through your DMs on Instagram to answer any questions. And I'm sure Kirsten already knows where to stream, but I'm a Cheerleader, a wonderful movie we should all be watching. I feel like Netflix is streaming it for free. So if you guys are interested in those, then feel free to watch that. Any last words, Beth?
No, but thank you all for joining us. And Kirsten, thanks for a great talk.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye.